Welcome to today's PASS open call info session. My name is Melissa West. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I oversee the visual and performing arts here at Snug Harbor. I'm joined by Shauna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Salmon. I'm the Arts Production and Gallery Manager here at Snug Harbor, and I work very closely with the past artists when they're here for support reasons.
And so we're going to be walking you through the PASS application today and just going through the history and the context around the program. We are really excited that our annual open call is now live. The application deadline is April 6th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. That will be the closing of the application window. So we hope that information sessions like this will give you the resources and tools that you need to create the application that's going to really compel the panel and get everyone excited about your project. So I did just want to point out that if you need access to closed captioning, there should be a button at the bottom of the Zoom screen that you can click on to activate closed captioning. And if you have any questions or need technical support throughout today's presentation, please feel free to send a direct message to Shauna or myself, and we will do our best to troubleshoot with you in real time. So the image on the screen right now, I think, is a really powerful image to encapsulate what this opportunity is all about. This is a photo of the Stephen Petronio Company for their PASS CUNY Dance Initiative residency, which took place in 2022. And the dancers that you see here worked very closely with Stephen and the company while they were in residence here for an entire month, and they got to live and work on campus and develop a new project. And so, as you can see here, very kind of intentional, meaningful, creative practice, and just a beautiful example of what this residency program is all about. So let us begin. Here's another visual image, which I feel like really, again, kind of just communicates the variety of different ways that this residency can be approached. This is an image of Yoshiko Chuma, a choreographer. Actually, this is an image of collaborators performing her work in 2015, right at the entrance to the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art, which is housed in the oldest building on Snug Harbor's campus. So a lot of this residency is about connecting to the physical site and the sort of historical, cultural, community layers that have really, kind of invigorated Snug Harbor over the years. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this, but we want to share some visual examples along the way today just to get you thinking, inspired, curious, and we think that this is really a great representation of the spirit of the residency. To take a step back, we want to just share a little bit about what is the vision, the artistic vision for Snug Harbor. Snug Harbor, for those of you who may be tuning in and maybe are less familiar, Snug Harbor is an 83-acre cultural campus on Staten Island's North Shore. We are one of the 5 boroughs in New York City, but we are a little different. You have to take a ferry to get to us. And, some of you on the call may be Staten Island artists, but this opportunity is open to everyone who might live or work or have a creative practice in the New York City metropolitan area. So it's a pretty broad range for those of you who are interested in applying. And the artistic vision for Snug Harbor is really to be a springboard for artistry that is bold and unexpected, artistry that is innovative, that is challenging the status quo, artistry that really kind of gets people excited about the history, the landscape, and the many sort of architectural and cultural layers that make up the campus. We celebrate work that is in conversation with and lifts up the vibrant diversity of Staten Island. And we really are encouraging and exploring those collaborative and interdisciplinary connections between the historical, cultural, and environmental aspects of our built environment. So today's opportunity is called PASS. the PASS Open Call. PASS is an acronym that stands for Performing Arts Salon Saturdays, and it is a performing arts residency program that takes place at Snug Harbor. And the focus on this program is the creation and development of new and original work in dance, music, theater, and multidisciplinary performance. We really define multidisciplinary performance, and actually all of these categories, we take a very sort of expansive view on what that could mean. So we've had artists who are based in a practice around poetry, or perhaps you are creating dance, but it's site specific or doesn't fit into a traditional construction of what dance is, new sound, opera. There have been many different artists who transcend some of these disciplines. You might be working in installation art, or you might have a practice that isn't neatly confined into a category, but the main essence is that you are working through the body, and that you are creating new and original work. So you're not remounting ideas that have existed either in your own body of work or other folks. You are really developing and generating new ideas. This opportunity is for 4 projects that will be selected to be scheduled between the fall of 2023 and the spring of 2024. And it is an open call process. It's free to apply. And it is, as I mentioned, open to artists who are living and working in the New York City metropolitan area. The objectives of the PASS residency program include providing space and support for performing artists at different stages in their careers to develop and deepen their craft. So this is not solely an opportunity for emerging artists. We've had artists who are just at the very early stages of their career, alongside artists who are more established or have an institutional or choreographic or artistic body of work. This is for projects that are either at the early stages of development. So it might be a new idea that you're working on, or it might be an idea that you have had some momentum behind, but maybe you are hoping to develop a new portion of this project or a new section of your piece. There's a lot of leeway in terms of how we define what that looks like. One of the main objectives of this program is to incubate discourse and community engagement around new ideas and artistic expression. So again, conversation is really critical to the development of new ideas, of creativity, of community and civic engagement. And so we really want to see projects that are somehow tuning into what's going on in the world, what's going on in the community, what's going on in the field. That can take many shapes. And the goal is that there will be some opportunity for an audience or the public to come into the process and either see what you've been working on, and so you can share that work, typically toward the end of your residency, and that there might be some kind of talk back or conversation or Q&A. Again, it could look in many different ways, but that there is this sense of discourse that's at the heart of that. And another aspect is cultivating a supportive environment for artists and creative workers to take risks. Risks in your process, risks in your practice, and your vision, right? Like you might be taking a new leap into an idea or a territory in your practice that feels unfamiliar, or it's new. And so this is really that space. It's a nurturing and safe environment. We are in New York City, but we're a little bit, feels a little bit kind of outside of that, outside of the main New York City art world. So you get a little bit of space. Literally, it's 83 acres, but then also just kind of the opportunity to maybe do something that you wouldn't do if you had, if you were presenting in an environment that was a little bit more formal. So there's a work in process element to it. It's very much process-based, and so that's really important for us to make sure that artists understand that when you're applying for this opportunity, it's really for you to go deeper into your work and practice, and whether you're at the early stages of a project, whether you're at the emerging side of your career, or you've you've created work for a long time and you just need a little space to develop something new. So that's what this program is really all about. So this opportunity is currently open we are accepting applications through April 6th, as I mentioned, which I believe is a Thursday. And you are welcome to submit your applications up until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, although I always encourage you to submit your application before the deadline. Give yourself time to think through the questions, think through your proposal, and just to have peace of mind that you're not waiting until the very last moment in case, computer glitches, things happen. So get your application in when you can. And we hope to notify all applicants, regardless of the outcome of your submission, by May 20th. So we have a goal of selecting projects, in that window of time, and we'll select four-week residencies, which will then be scheduled between September 2023 and June of 2024. And as I mentioned, each selected project will culminate in some kind of public performance presentation. It's a work in progress style. It's not a final product. We don't want to put that sort of emphasis on it, but it is an opportunity to invite the community into where you are in your process. So that's typically scheduled at the end of your residency. Now there's a note on here that dancers and choreographers, there is a separate open call that actually just closed for the CUNY Dance Initiative. So through this process today that we're talking about, we're selecting 4 projects. There's a 5th project that's part of our past cohort that is selected directly through the CUNY Dance Initiative open call. And so that's not something we're going to really go into today. The residency window for that just closed for their applications. And that particular opportunity is in partnership with the CUNY Dance Initiative and the College of Staten Island. If you already applied to that, you can still apply for PASS, right? Because there's always the possibility that, you sort of maximize your chances to be seen by the panel. And, there's some difference between this residency. If you get this particular one that we're talking about today, there is not that component of partnership with the CUNY Dance Initiative or the College of Staten Island. So if you applied for that already, you are still welcome to apply for this. And if you didn't apply for that, then don't even worry about it. So what do you receive as an artist in residence through PASS? There are several really exciting opportunities that this residency affords, one of which is a $1,500 stipend for your residency and performance. We recognize that that's never enough to cover the cost of taking an ambitious leap and building a new project or developing new work. But we hope that that is something to help you get along in your 4-week window of your residency time. And you can use that however you want. We do not request receipts or anything like that. That's literally just an honorarium that's given to you for your project. And as another component, we also give photo and video documentation. So for that final culminating event, we bring in a videographer to document that, so that you can then use that as a work sample for a future opportunity, or just a sort of a snapshot of where you were in this residency, and you can use that however you like. So each selected artist receives up to 100 hours of time. That's a big number. It doesn't, that's the max amount of time that we can book. And this is for access to the Dance Center studios or the galleries in the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art. Both venues are used as active rehearsal spaces for artists in residence. And some of those spaces are shared spaces, so we have to make sure that artists are scheduled and on the calendar, and sometimes we move you around based on availability. But in general, there's a lot of time where the dance studios are just totally ripe for artists to come in and share and explore and be in rehearsal. So 100 hours can be used across 4 weeks in many different ways. You can do like all day, every day if you wanted, or you can do focus in on just the weekends. We recognize that everyone has busy lives and work schedules to work around. And so it's not a mandatory requirement that you use all of that time, but we want to make sure that you are in the space doing what you need to do to actualize your work. So you do want to make sure that you can commit some of that time to studio time. And selected artists receive what I think is one of the most unique opportunities affiliated with this program. You get 1 month access to private residency space in a historic cottage. And so you can literally live and work there. The cottages are fully furnished. We'll walk you through what some of the, setup of that is. And this can, again, you can kind of come and go as you please. We recognize not everyone can be literally here all of the time for 4 weeks, but it's really your launch pad to spend some dedicated time, be able to cook a meal in between rehearsals, or maybe take a production meeting in the living room of the cottage. There's lots of ways that you can use that time. So who's eligible for this opportunity? So this is a free and open call. So as I mentioned, anyone who is based in New York City, and we define that relatively loosely. So even if you don't physically live in New York City, but you live in New Jersey or Westchester, Long Island, the surrounding New York City metropolitan area, we do want to see a demonstrated history that you've been creating work in New York City. So that is kind of, it is important to have some history presenting work here, but also a demonstrated history that you've been creating and developing your own work. We don't have a time frame. It doesn't have to be over the last 5 years. You might be, just out of college, and we will consider that, but you do want to have some demonstrated history that you've been developing new work. You must be over 18 to apply. And anyone who is currently enrolled in or let me rephrase that, anyone who is or will be enrolled in a university or college degree granting program between August 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, you are currently not able to apply. If you are in college right now, or you're getting your MFA right now, but you will be done by before August 1st, you are eligible to apply. So even though you're currently in school, you can still apply under the basis that you will be out of the program by August 1st. And unfortunately, if you have received a past residency in the past, we love you, but we want to give space to new artists and artists who have not necessarily received resources through this particular program. So we definitely want to keep in touch with our past alumni, and we try to activate other opportunities for many of the performing artists that we work with. But for this particular opportunity, if you've already received a past residency, you are not eligible to apply. One second. Okay, great. So criteria. So what makes a successful application? So I would say the three most kind of basic points of building an application is making sure that you have a clear and strong narrative, that your writing gives some background and clarity around what it is that you do, what it is that you want to accomplish, and how you're going to use your residency time. So that doesn't mean you have to, write a novel. Most of the application questions are limited to 1,000 characters, but you want to be able to demonstrate a story around your work and compel the people who are reading your application about why it is important to invest in your work at this particular moment, and how you would use that time here, and what makes Snug Harbor the perfect venue for that opportunity for you. So you want to be able to have a strong and clear narrative. And then the other major portion of your application is your work sample. So you want to be able to demonstrate artistic merit. You want to be able to show the panel that you have a strong original voice, and that's going to come through in your work sample. So picking the right cue points, picking the right kind of because it's only a 5-minute window for the panel to review a work sample, a video of your live performance. You want to make sure that it's the right moment in that particular video that's going to really like hook someone in. And that kind of can show the range of what you do. And so that's going to look different for every person on this call. But you want to just make sure that it's visually clear, that the imagery is clear, it's not shaky, it's visible, it's dynamic. We don't necessarily want to see a video reel. So I do recommend a continuous 5-minute work sample of a piece that you have done recently. It doesn't have to be the most recent piece, but it has to have some demonstration of your artistic vision that's coming out in your narrative. You want to be able to reflect that in your work sample. And then site responsiveness. As I mentioned, why is Snug Harbor the absolute ultimate venue for this particular residency? There are many residencies across the city and across the country that support, work, new development, new ideas, but not every space is an 83-acre campus with gardens and historic architecture and the opportunity to really like immerse yourself in that. So why here is an important question. So the panel will be looking at how you're articulating that in your work, in your writing, and that will be something we are looking for. And so how are we doing this selection process? We are comprising a juried panel of people who are familiar with Snug Harbor, who are arts workers, who have a background in the variety of genres and disciplines, and they will be looking at applications and in a fairly democratic process of evaluating each application based on the criteria, program priorities, and the objectives that I mentioned. That will be part of the conversation in which the panel selects the top projects. And so we have folks from across the city, we have folks from across the different disciplines that we are highlighting here. The hope is to really look at each application against the full breadth of what we're talking about today. Program priorities, I would say, shift from year to year, but a lot of times we are looking at making sure that there's at least one Staten Island artist that is selected in the cohort, because this is an opportunity based on Staten Island. We really want to make sure that we're investing in the arts community here. And we want to make sure that we're giving attention to the breadth of disciplines. So I know that my background is in dance and I talk a lot from the dance perspective, but we have artists who are musicians, who are theater makers, who are working in, as I mentioned, opera and installation. And so we want to make sure that there's at least, a variety of disciplines being represented in that very small cohort of 4 projects. So we do our best to look at all of that as a team and make those decisions.
All right, so here we have one of the cottages that would be one of the homes for someone who's selected for the month that they are here. This is Cottage B, and we have a second cottage, Cottage A, and we tend to keep you mostly to one cottage when possible, but it's an 18th century cottage, fully functional with bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, living, and dining room. So this is the living room for one of the cottages. As you can see, there's a couch, there's air conditioning, there's a coffee table, there's chairs. There's also Wi-Fi in both of the cottages. And the couch that is in each cottage also pulls out to a full-size bed, which will lead us to the bedrooms. Cottage A has 3 bedrooms, and Cottage B will have 2 bedrooms. But each cottage can comfortably sleep 4 to 6 folks.
Yes. And so I think there's actually one question in the chat already that asks if they're a part of a devising group, are we able to host more than one artist in the house? And so as Shauna pointed out, each house can accommodate up to 4 to 6 people. Depends on all of your levels of comfort in terms of where you sleep and how you arrange the space. Each residency gets access to one cottage. There are some exceptions if there's a big company or something like that, but typically you can expect one cottage which can house up to 4 to 6 people.
hmm And in each of those cottages, we do have a full-size bed as like a separate bedroom, and then 2 to 3 twin-size beds, depending on the cottage you're in. Whether if it's cottage A, there's an additional 2 bedrooms that can house 3 more twins beds. If you're in cottage B, there's one additional bedroom that houses 2 twin-size beds. And like I mentioned, there is a pull-out couch in each cottage, but we also have air mattresses and cots if needed.
Yeah, and so there is a question on the application that asks about how many people are you collaborating with? Like, what are some of those names? We understand that when you submit your application, you might not have the project pinned down entirely in terms of who you're working with, but a sense of like, this is how many people we're working on with for this project will be
Hmm
helpful to communicate.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned, we do have living room and dining room in each cottage. So you do have lots of space to kind of spread out if you are a large group and you do need to meet, or if you need to work while you're in the cottage, whether it's from a computer or anything like that, there is space for all of that to happen. And yeah, and like I mentioned, we do have a fully functioning kitchen with a fridge and a stove and utensils, pots and pans, all of that, as well as 2 restrooms in each cottage. So there's a bathroom upstairs and downstairs. Yeah, scroll to the next image. And this is an example of what one of the bedrooms with 2 beds would look like. The bedrooms that have 2 beds are fairly large bedrooms, and they tend to have 2 closets per bedroom for the larger bedrooms, just so you're aware. And then we have the dance center in building G. This is room G201, which is typically where the share out will take place for a residency. I mean, obviously, like Melissa mentioned, there are some exceptions to that where, there's some site specificness where some folks are in the galleries for their share out or they're outside on the grounds. But in a typical residency, this is where the share out would take place. And we have in the dance center, there are 3 dance studios. They all have beautiful natural light. G201, I believe, is 20, 40, right? Or
20 by
yeah.
20, the studios are 20 by 30. There are two studios at that size, and then there is a smaller studio, which is 19 by
Mhm.
24.
Yes. And this studio here has a marley floor with ballet bars. And as you can see, the previous studio has a hardwood floor.
Yes, and I would also add that this studio we're looking at now also has mirrors. The other studio
Mhm.
does not.
Yes, and this one also has a built-in sound system, but don't let that hinder you because we do have portable Bluetooth speakers that can move into another space if you so choose to rehearse in another studio. And then this is one of the galleries in the Newhouse Center, which is just below the dance studios, that has been used as either rehearsal space and performance space. But with that, we'll put the caveat that like sometimes there will be art on the walls depending on the time of year, and we would not deinstall the artwork for the performance. So it's something that would have to coexist with what's already happening in the space. Yeah, this is a community workshop that took place in one of the dance studios, which that is a possibility within the residency if you wanted to host a community class or some kind of community share out in either in addition to the public share out or in place of in a way.
Yes, and there are many ways in which that can take shape. We also do, at times, try to integrate our artists and residents into our Youth Matters program to facilitate workshops with students. And so, if you're interested in the educational or like community class component, we can discuss what that looks like. It's not a requirement for this
Mhm.
program, but we have seen artists who are really interested in that and try to give them the space and platform to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. And then this is Lasina Koulibaly, who performed in 2016 at the Newhouse Center. He's in Building G, which is the Building C, which is the main hall for the Newhouse Center, and it's the oldest building on the grounds. And he's performing here as opposed to performing in the dance studio. So there are many options as to where you can perform, depending on where you feel drawn to while you're creating your work.
Yes, and drawn to, but then also sometimes we have to negotiate various
Hmm
calendars of other activities. And so we typically will do an orientation with the selected artists to learn
hmm
more about like how we can really fit it into the many spaces that we have. So it's something, to whatever you put into your application, know that that can shift depending on what's available, how your project may shape up once you actually get here. And it's an iterative conversation that we have.
Absolutely. For example, this is Rebecca Medina. She was a past artist in 2021, and she did a sound walk as opposed to a traditional indoor showing. And there was a recording that you listened to that kind of guided you around the grounds and through the nature. And there were different performances happening. This one happened in the wetlands, and she had another performer that performed across from the Connie Gretz Secret Garden. So it was more of an immersive experience where you were traveling throughout multiple spaces to experience the performance versus sitting as a static audience. And then this is Nia Love, who's performing on our Heritage Farm, which is another location that is a little more difficult to navigate if you wanted to have a performance there, but that all depends on the growing season and if there's other programming happening in that space. But she was able to do something by the Heritage Farm as well as by the Connie Gretz Secret Garden.
And that's something that we work with each selected residency to kind of fine tune over the duration of your time here. Because there is, especially if you're interested in the more site responsive projects that might
Mm-hmm.
take place outdoors, we often have to loop in either the heritage farm or in this instance, or the director of horticulture, and so all spaces are up for discussion, but there might be certain limitations or considerations that we have to really adhere to in particularly the gardens.
Absolutely. And then this is Peter Zumo performing at the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art in 2015. As you can see, he's a musician. And yeah, there's lots of possibilities within the Newhouse Center and the dance studios, which I think is fantastic. And we can go to the next photo. This was in 2017. The past artist was Ramya Ramana, and this took place in the galleries. As you can see, there's artwork on the walls, and we were able to make that work within that space. So, like I mentioned before, with performing at the Newhouse Center, sometimes there will be art in the space, sometimes it complements your work and it's a good fit, and sometimes it's not, but that's usually all up for discussion and then figuring out logistics behind that.
I'll also say, just because we've had this question come up recently, this is an example of a project that was grounded in poetry. It was sort of like
Mm-hmm.
spoken performance. If there's anyone on the call who maybe their practice is grounded in poetry, I would say, like, there has to be it's really, we're looking for sort of a process beyond just a traditional reading. So this was more of a, like, there was a dramaturgy around the
Mm-hmm.
poetry that they were sharing. So you want to think beyond a little bit beyond that, and a more kind of, I don't want to say theatrical, but that there should be some kind of sort of overarching experience that you're hoping to shape.
Absolutely. And then this is, like we mentioned, people have used many locations. This was from Adrienne Westwood's past in 2019. She was actually able to transform the cottage into part of her performance and to part of the experience. And there were projections throughout the space, and they actually invited the audience to come into the cottage to experience it as an installation. So there were projections on the first floor, on the second floor, and different little installations that you could experience. And then this is from Marion Soto in 2017. The performance took place in the dance center, but there was actually an extension to the performance, which were projections that were up in the Newhouse Center that stayed a few weeks after the performance. So you could still experience her, I believe her piece was called Modes. You were able to experience that even after the performance was over for a bit, because she came in at a time where there wasn't an exhibition currently on the walls. And then this is Lily Gold in the dance studio. As you can see, this is like kind of a general typical audience seating right here, and you can kind of see everyone and see what the artist is doing on the floor and creating pieces during that time. So this is an option as well. And then we have Kinesis Project, who's a past artist in 2019. They kind of did a super immersive experience where they were through multiple spaces. They were in the main hall gallery. They were in the Hyphen, which is a long hallway that connects building C to building G. And then they went outside onto the Newhouse lawn, which is the area you see there with the ship in the background, and then onto Shinbone Alley, where the dancers kind of took over various spaces and the audience traveled with them. So that can sometimes also be an option depending on the time of year and depending on what kind of artwork is in each space.
So to just recap the application checklist, and hopefully the imagery that Shauna just talked us through gives you more of a sense of, the many different kinds of projects and how many different ways there is to really approach this. As a review, our application process closes on April 6th, 2023, which is a Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a Google form. I recommend that you work outside of the Google form. That's my recommendation for whenever anyone's working on a grant application, because you don't want to get stuck with, like, for some reason a glitch happens and then you lose your work. So I recommend you sort of work from there. There is at the very start of the application an eligibility question. You can't get past that until you select, that you're eligible. You basically have to say that you meet the eligibility requirements. It takes you to the next screen, and then you should be able from there to see all of the questions that make up the application. It's a combination of short and long form responses, so collecting your basic contact information and then moving into descriptive questions about your project. As I mentioned, most of the application is the character limits are between 500 and 1,000 characters. So again, we really want you to be concise. We don't want you to be writing, massive novels. We want this to be easy for you. We want this to be easy for the panel that's reading the application. So keep it concise, keep it clear and to the point. What is it that you want to do? How are you accomplishing this? Why Snug Harbor? All of the, various questions that will come up. And then your work sample, where you'll just, kind of put a very brief description. You'll share the cue points, and then you'll share a strong work sample. So start thinking about that now. And then to kind of cap the application is a demographic survey. The demographic survey is really just to have a sense for us as a team on how the recruiting process went and making sure that we were reaching a broad and diverse applicant pool. We do not take that demographic data and kind of drill into a particular application, but we do extract and aggregate the snapshot of, this is how this application cycle looked, in terms of gender and ethnic and racial background, questions about your age and all of it, and whether or not you identify as a person with disabilities. So just kind of like a traditional demographic survey that, we do share sort of in an aggregate, big picture, anonymous view with, the panel. So we will say, like, these are how many applications we got. This is kind of an overview of like what the data looks like. And then we do have sometimes the opportunity to share that with funders if that's sort of part of the final reporting process. So those are the sort of aspects of a completed application form, which is again in Google Forms. Important to say that late and incomplete submissions will not be reviewed. So again, I encourage you to get it in before the actual deadline. And I also want to just reiterate to work and save it in a separate document. That'll also help you if you're doing applications for other things so that you have, kind of space where you're working. If you do have questions, we're going to look through the Q&A box now. I see that there may have been some things that came through. But if for some reason there's a question that doesn't get answered in today's session, you can email either Shauna or myself. Our emails are in this screen right here. We'll also put it into the chat. We will do our best to get you a timely response. And we'll also put this, we did an info session earlier this week and tonight, and we're going to take the better of the two and put that onto YouTube so you can go back and take a look if, something kind of comes up and you want to revisit this session. So let's take a look at the chat. So we have a question in the work sample. If we have a combination of live performances edited together with another relevant clip, or is it recommended that we only use one continuous performance? For example, in my sample, I would be editing together dance and poetry reading excerpts because both are relevant to the proposal. I would say it is recommended to use one continuous performance when you can. But if you have a situation like you're mentioning where you would be, kind of weaving together maybe multiple readings that really kind of articulate and get across your project idea and are relevant to your proposal, I would say you can do that. What we don't want is a reel of like, all of the different projects and, kind of a highlight reel. Like that's something that doesn't really give us the opportunity to see a little bit more of the content. So you only have 5 minutes. So with a dance and poetry sort of mashup, however, you might want to consider maybe like 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and maybe a minute. Like, you want to think about how you're going to use that time because it's a short amount of time. And I hope that that answered your question. Are there any limitations with pass regarding tickets for the performance? So I should say that for the public sharing, which is a work in progress performance, want to not emphasize performance because not everyone kind of approaches it from like, it's not a final product, but we do a sort of presentation where you're able to share that out. We do actually have a small admission fee for that, and that's usually $10 for general admission and I think $8 for Snug Harbor members. That's typically how it's structured, and that's because we do provide some wine and we provide some very light snacks, and we want to make sure that we can kind of have some resources for that. So there is a ticket fee. There have been sort of instances that don't necessarily fit that model, but that's generally how we approach it. Is there a map to help identify the spaces within Snug Harbor? For example, I just heard the name of that long hall that's connected to the ground level to the dance studio, but didn't know the name. I've seen different spaces at Snug Harbor that have been interesting me, but I don't know how to name them for the proposal. So we do have a map on our website. And Shauna, I'm not sure if you can pull that and just plug it into the chat. We do have a map on our website and kind of a page that's dedicated to directions, but that might not have all of the names. So I guess I will, maybe from this presentation, we can just recap some of that, and maybe we haven't named everything. So this particular space outside is called Shinbone Alley. That's between the 2 rows of front 5 buildings. So if you're interested in that sort of outdoor space in between the 10 buildings that are in the front of the campus, that's Shinbone Alley. The dance studios, we usually just call that the dance center. Another example of that. The cottage. So we usually refer to the cottages as you can refer to it as the cottage. And, they're both very similar in setup. This is another one that took place in the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art, which is comprised of 4 galleries in Building G. And then this long corridor, which is called the main hall. The main hall gallery is the oldest building on campus. That is one of the spaces in the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art. Another of the dance center. This is another of the galleries in Building G, which are the connective space in the Newhouse Center. So we have Building C, which is the main hall, and then Building G, which are the galleries that we refer to as Gallery G. This might not be the best way to kind of note all of the spaces. So we can maybe find a way to list that in a more clear way. But if you are really interested in kind of being very specific in your proposal, you can also just email us and we can maybe offline that question a little bit.
Yeah, and the map is linked in the chat for anyone that wants to see it. If that answers any of your questions, but like Melissa said, you can just email us and we can answer any more in-depth questions that you may have about it.
Yes. Are there any other questions? Feel free to use this time. We have a little more time that we can answer some other questions. I know another question that might come up is you know, that public event, how long is it? Like, how much work should we be making? Like, there is no like one exact formula for that, but we do tend to encourage an experience to invite the public in. You know, a presentation which could be a couple of short excerpts of pieces that you're working on, or it could be a more sort of you know, kind of continuous presentation. I would say minimum we typically do is like 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. We don't usually go over 45 minutes. And that's not including the 15, 20 minutes that we use for like a chat or like an audience Q&A. This has shifted in COVID because we recognize that work doesn't look the same anymore. Like, things are shifting in the world of performance, and we want to be um, responsive and mindful of that. And so, you know, we just want there to be some kind of opportunity to share the work. I would say past events are usually about an hour and 15 minutes or so, including the Q&A. And then we usually have time at the beginning. There's a little bit of a reception. And so you can either come a little bit early or stay a little bit after, mingle with the cast or the artists or the team, and have some, you know, opportunity to share space together. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we will, you know, again, be available through email. I'll put my email again in the chat, and Shauna's email as well. And then if you do have questions after, which is totally understandable, just feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll try to address your question as best we can. And then this is the last info session, so we won't be hosting another live event, but we will post one of these info sessions to our YouTube channel in case you want to like refresh your memory as you're working on it. Great. Well, thank you all for being a part of this. We do hope you'll consider putting in an application. This is always a really great opportunity for us to see your work, to learn about new projects, what's happening in the field. We just want to express our gratitude for you to even, you know, consider applying for this program. I think it's a really great opportunity. And, you know, there's other opportunities throughout the year. We have the Porch Place Festival, we have a dance festival, we have other experiences throughout the many seasons. And so, you know, we hope to connect with your work in some shape or form, and look forward to looking at your proposal. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.